increase, then mid-year is a 1.5% increase. Then January 19 is 1.5% increase, and then next summer is 1.5%, and the following 3 years are 3% increases. That's a typical arbitration award. We did get a couple personal days though that we tried to work. They had 14 personal days. We ended up getting approvals back, so it's 12 personal days. And the new hires after 2019 will be on a different longevity scale pay. They'll only get increases every 2 years instead of every year. Those are the main highlights. There are a few other small changes.
And there won't be this departmental review officer thing then after.
That's been in the contract for several years.
But I'm just saying for anybody that's hired after 2008, that's not applicable then.
Correct. And we still have a couple more officers that will qualify for that.
Yes.
Okay, moving on to the design guide for historical structures and features. And I'll turn that over to you, Rhonda.
Okay,
Please.
thank you. So I'm here to present the final version of the design guidelines. These, as you know, began about 3 years ago in the process of grant writing from the city. And grant was awarded, and we have been working with a design preservation company now for a couple of years. And the grant is wrapped and the final report is in. So I'm just here to present to council. We've already had public meetings, and of course the committee did its work, and there were 2 council representatives on that committee. So I won't spend a lot of time. This is a PowerPoint that was presented to the community in a 1-hour session. Obviously, I will truncate that, but I just want to give you an idea of how the design guidelines look. If you're not familiar with the notion of a design guideline, it's a document that's intended to be a resource for homeowners, business owners, realtors, entrepreneurs, anyone who has an interest in maintaining the historical integrity of a structure. And it also helps with decision making in cases of repairs. So let's say, for example, a homeowner is interested in how to make repairs to a historically significant structure, but they have a limited budget. The design guidelines give suggestions and prioritization that might be helpful for that homeowner. These are volunteer guidelines. They're not ordinance attached, but they are intended to be a strong resource for anyone in the community. And happily, we'll have a couple of printed copies available in public buildings, but anyone may download the PDF that will be attached to a couple of different websites, including the city's. So it's a free document. It's intended to be used and to be enjoyed. So let me just show you a little bit of what the guideline entails. This is our committee, and if anyone would like to see this in more detail, you can send me an email and I can get back to you on the details from this presentation. And these slides are taken to a degree from the guidelines, but there's been some changes. But there is a good section at the beginning that helps to orient the user to how to access the information. This isn't intended like a novel where you sit down and read from beginning to end. It's a resource guide, so there will be topics, and if you, for example, have a question about windows, you'll be able to look at the information in the contents and jump right to that section, so you don't have to read through the whole guide to get to it. What's wonderful about our set of guidelines is the amount of character that's taken straight from our city. The photographs and drawings, without exception, derive from Titusville. We have emphasis not only on residential, but also business, as well as recreational areas, and we were pretty insistent to include a section on cemeteries. There's also, according to feedback from the public, emphasis on some other kinds of architectural features that are unique to Titusville, like our ironwork. If you've grown up here and you lived here, you may not notice the ironwork, but people who aren't from Titusville notice our ironwork. it's distinctive and notable in the historic community. Also, this committee did quite a bit of work in helping to reestablish what are the borders of our historic district. There were some conflicting documents in the state archives as a result of sort of a two-tiered process of application back in, I think, the 70s. So they helped to clarify that and give us a good map of our boundaries. But this document is not intended just for the historic district, and ours covers a huge swath of the city compared to what most have in their historic district. But any home, even that has a few historic characters. Some of my favorite homes in Titusville are very small, modest homes that have, you know, a little bit of beautiful gingerbread on the porch or something distinctive. So this is our National Register Historic District. Why is a design guideline useful? It helps give us examples of what would be an appropriate way to do renovations. Oftentimes there's very little cost difference, but a huge aesthetic difference, and people maybe honestly don't think about the ramifications of certain decisions. So this is intended to help those who would like to choose to use it. And the guide has all kinds of sections giving an overview, architectural styles, and then the actual guideline goes through specifics of building needs. So we start with what are the most important areas, like your foundation. You want to make sure those important areas are covered first before you go prettifying your windows. So one of the features in the guidelines is that they do use drawings and a lot of definitions, and that's helpful. Some people employ architects, and if you know the lingo that the architects are trained in, it's useful. Instead of saying, hey, I want to reproduce that thingy over my window, if you can actually look at a drawing and see the name and give them the information they need. This drawing is interesting because we asked them to put this in right at the very end, because we were a little bit concerned that when you look at all the photos that people would think that this document is for all those big houses on Main Street and North Perry, but it's really not. There are so many wonderful small architectural features in all sizes of Titusville homes. So we had to just do a line drawing that shows some of the historic features that you could identify on practically any older home in Titusville that sets them apart from more modern architecture. And then it goes through architectural styles. It does a great job using photography and line drawing in order to give the names for each part of these styles and also the characteristic features. And they just did a wonderful job. This was a lot of work. I mean, we had draft after draft. We had experts on the committee that kind of gave direction, because some of the information in the Park Service, the documents sent up to the National Park Service weren't actually correct, so we had some local experts helping with that corrections. And you can see that quite a number of styles are identified. When we had our first public meeting, Tracy from Tracy Kidder Preservation noted that we had, I think it was 17 distinct Victorian styles, which is really unusual for a town of our size. So she didn't detail all of those here, but the major ones. So how to use the guidelines, it helps to give people priorities if they do want to try to retain historical integrity while also being practical with their dollars that they have to spend. So they came up with a set of symbols that will help the user of the guidelines. With each symbol, it signifies a particular approach, like retain and preserve, repair, reface, or refinish. If something is the case, where they'll draw it out. If this is the case with your roof, you need to replace. So we found that these symbols were great, and they actually created this for our guidelines. These are not something you would see in the standard set of design guidelines. They also go through priorities. Those of you who are contractors, you already know this, but some new homeowners don't necessarily know. that they need to look at their foundation and roof and load-bearing walls before they look at their windows or their exterior buildings. Sorry, I'm going backwards. So when they go through each of these sections, they actually give examples from Titusville. And again, buildings that we all walk by every day and don't notice, they draw our attention and say, look, this is a decorative band above your foundation wall. This is a distinguishing architectural feature. It's not common in all buildings. So it's something that you would want to retain if possible if you were undergoing repairs to that building. They also go through architectural roof styles and give examples. And they do this for each of the priorities. Windows, doors, porches, chimneys is priority 2. And they give some great examples from town as to successfully repaired windows and some not as polished. Again, giving architectural terms. Same for doors, giving lots of examples from town. Priority 3 is then getting down to architectural items that are decorative. And I found this actually really helpful because I don't know all of the architectural terms, and it is useful when you're comparing homes and looking at replacement materials on, if you're trying to either find something here in a salvage situation or online, it's helpful to know the terms. Keystones, for example, wedge-shaped piece of stone at the apex of the masonry arch. We all look at that and we know it's distinctive, but we don't know what it is and how it's distinctive. And also they pointed out how we have streetscapes that are remarkably walkable, sidewalks that are retained, tree-lined streets, not just on our main street, but in our neighborhoods. That's not necessarily common in our area. They go through commercial structures and how to identify patterns in your facade so that if there is a case where there needs to be an infill replacement or another repair, that you would keep in mind some of the best practices for making that really pop and become a part of that historic streetscape. And that's to the advantage of the business owner. It does address demo and how you might replace in a way that's sensitive to retaining the historic character of the street while still having a modern building infill. And they spent some time on landscaping because Titusville folks spend time on their landscaping. They were very impressed with even what average people were doing in their yards and working with their ironwork and retaining these yards. And same for sidewalks. They give examples of historic sidewalks and then how you would go about replacing, and also even the tradesmen's marks that we find in our sidewalks. So there's a lot of resources at the end of this document. This isn't the full document, these are excerpts. And I would invite all of you to go to the city website here, and probably within a month we'll have the final version up and enjoy these guidelines. This was, in my opinion, money and time very well spent.
Thank you very, very much. Keith, you have anything you want to say?
I think this is great. It's one of the things that council, and we worked with planning commission around on this thing here, that we wanted some kind of guidelines, but we weren't trying to force people into doing something. We wanted people to be able to, as you said, recognize the attributes of their homes and possibilities that they could use. I went through this, one of the excerpts, what it's not on here, they give you colors, typical color charts, things like that. So I think it's a job well done. Thank you.
Bill, you're hiding behind it. Get over there. I'm just teasing you, but, yeah, a lot of work in
guess I appreciate the fact that it's not a cookie cutter plan, very, very focused on the things that Titusville has that is unique to the area, and particularly, as Cindy mentioned, the color schemes. I, for one, can look at something and say, yeah, that looks good together. But if I have to pick it out myself, yeah, I'm not so good. So I appreciate that about it. As well as some of the options that you have in terms of repairing and or replacing, whatever the case may be. And I think it'll be valuable as a
Thank you, Bill. Moving on to resolution number 10 of 2018, the 2018 CDBG funds.
Okay, we have to pass another resolution because we changed the projects that were eligible for the CDBG money. If you all recall, we landed on 3 projects at the hearings. One of the projects was Blight, and then there was the walk bridge to replace the bridge on Perry Street. And the third project was to reskin one of the buildings down at Public Works. Well, the reskinning of the building at Public Works is not, they won't give us money for that. It doesn't meet the specifications. So what we did in that case was we just upped the blight and the bridge money.
296, and how much is towards the bridge?
Oh, I don't know if I recall, is that on here?
88 for demo,
Yeah, 88 for demo and the balance is the bridge, whatever that is.
18% for admin.
Okay, wait a minute here, wait, 88 for blight?
Right, and there's a max on blight too, they'd only allow you to use 30%. So that's why 88,000, that odd number, that's all we're allowed to use in 1 year.
Okay,
And there's 18% admin money, which is
what is that?
53,000 and change, I believe.
53, okay, so the bridge, how much is allocated?
I don't know that. I didn't calculate that all out.
Okay,
You'd have to take this minus the 53, and that's what's for the bridge.
well, okay. Are you saying that we may have enough to do the bridge for next year, or will there be
Oh, there will be enough to do the walk bridge, yes,
for 2019?
provided they remove the bridge.
Okay,
That we're banking on PennDOT. They said that they would be taking that down in 2019. We are expecting that to happen.
okay. Good, that's good news.
question. As this is a county bridge, any discussion in terms of the county kicking it?
I think, I have not had those discussions. I think that Councilman Frazier has had some intentions. I don't know if he's had those discussions yet. He may have.
I've been working on some alternatives for that bridge that we have right now, and trying to get some other quotations. And I have had a conversation with Commissioner that when I get some of these quotations available, that we can sit down and talk about that, see whether they'd be interested in doing something like this.
Well, let me ask you this, if we changed to a vehicular bridge and not a pedestrian bridge, would this qualify for the CDBG funds or not?
I couldn't find any other actual driving bridges that have been covered in the past. They're
So
all
you're-
pedestrian,
All pedestrian. So,
bicycle
That's
pedestrian.
one of the things that are still open.
okay,
They actually, at first, they were reluctant to approve even the pedestrian bridge, but they did get back to us and say that they would approve that. So, and the application has to be submitted by the 1st of November, so we have to get this resolution passed at the next meeting to put in the application.
anything?
No.
Bill? Okay.
the only other thing that I wanted to mention, it's not on the agenda, but the VFW had come in and put in a special event application today, which will be approved. It's for an event that they want to hold for a 100-year anniversary of World War I and Veterans Day combination event in Shire Park. So I just wanted to get that out there, that they do intend on having that on Veterans Day.
It's
I
wonderful.
think that's great.
Yeah, it's wonderful.
2 o'clock's the time on that there, right now, I believe it is too.
2 o'clock?
I believe that's what it is.
On here it says 3, so we'll change it to 2.
No, if that's what Troy does, kind of 3, we,
Okay,
Yeah, it says 3.
okay. Public participation.
Mayor, I had a question about the CDBG projects. There was a question about doing the sidewalks for the city of Titusville. I was wondering why that wasn't a potential project for use of those funds.
That was discussed, that just wasn't one that was chosen.
I mean,
There's X amount of dollars, council decides which one they go to pick.
so you didn't have to, I mean, when did council decide that those were the 3 that they were gonna do? I never heard council say anything other than right now. Was it done during an executive session or?
We had a
Was-
meeting, we had a public meeting.
2 public meetings.
Well, it was brought up during the public meeting, I never heard you decide.
Okay, we're talking about it now, Jim.
I mean, it would benefit most of our town.
Do we have monies allocated for the sidewalks, the sidewalk program?
Not through CDBG.
No, I'm not, but in the budget,
Yes.
okay.
How much?
How much is in the budget?
For
There's
sidewalks?
Economic development money, that's $15,000 to be used as, the way it works is the person has to do the demolition of the sidewalk and haul it away. The city will form up and pour the new concrete free of charge.
What zones does that qualify
That's
for?
commercial C1 and C2.
How many people live in C1 and C2?
That's mostly commercial district.
So it doesn't benefit only a small fraction of Titusville, a very small fraction.
Well, everybody uses the commercial district, so.
And everybody
I
uses the
disagree.
residential too.
Not the traffic you get in resident, or in commercial.
Well, I live in the city, you don't live in the city, how would you know?
All right, let's stop that.
Yeah.
Let's stop it.
Council, are we happy with,
I'll have a conversation at the end of the day of the week, but when we make it personal, that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
I'm not making anything personal.
Well,
He said that nobody would use it in the residential area.
it's ridiculous.
Everybody uses it in residential.
okay. Are there any other questions or comments from the public?
I don't know what this falls under that there, but the VFW and the Legion, we're starting to talk about a project. I want to come in front of council to see if it was even feasible for us to do it. Back years ago, there used to be a big boards up there that had World War II, World War I veterans that was deceased, killed in action, World War II, Korea. There's nothing for any of the rest of them. We would like to take and go back and find out what it's feasible for us to take and fund this to the VFW and the Legion, to have a board put up there with the World War I veterans that have been killed in action, World War II, Korea, Vietnam, Iraq, Afghanistan, all these new conflicts in that area. But we wanted, before we proceeded anything, we wanted to see if it was feasible for the council to allow us to do that up in the city park.
In Shining Park.
I'm sorry, but names just elude me.
Cecil Daniels.
See, I knew it and I couldn't get it. Are you asking to put it over where the wall is
No, no.
presently? No, okay.
It would take me someplace up where it's away from that wall. We don't want right there.
Oh, okay, okay.
It used to be up in the other end of the park. From what the older fellows told me, that came to our meeting was talking about it. But it used to be up there, so a lot of people would come It's not just from Titusville, it's the surrounding area, just like we built a monument down there,
Okay,
we put Titusville area veterans. And that would be basically pretty much what it's gonna be. Basically, the names that are over on the wall at Meadville is basically what we wanna do here. Only it won't, it'll just be on wooden boards with names put onto them rather than being the concrete and everything like that.
I think you're gonna find a council that's gonna support you. Are you going to put a plan together so you can present
Well,
that?
yeah,
so
we
can
wanna
see
see
what
if
it
it's-
looks like?
Yes, but we wanted to
Okay.
find out if anything, if it was even possible for us to even go further with this project.
It is for me. Keith,
Without hesitation.
is that it? Yes. Dawn?
Yeah, I don't have a problem with that, I'm still not sure of the location that you're talking about. Are you talking about all the way at the other end of the park? or-
I'll be up in that end of the park somewhere. We don't have nothing set in stone where we wanna do it. We can
Okay.
get with everybody before we would take and pick a place to put it.
Sure.
Would that be approved? But yours, where we put this
Right.
at,
I just didn't know size-wise and stuff like that. That's yet to be determined.
it'll probably be, 16, probably at least 16 feet wide and, 4 by 8 sheets of plywood, and that.
See, so you get with Larry. You talk with Larry, you plan it with Larry, and he'll get with us,
Okay,
okay?
appreciate that.
You betcha, you're more than welcome.
We support our bets.
You betcha we do.
And another good point is that's what that community park is for, in my opinion, you know?
That's why I said, the
Be able
old
to
people
highlight.
told me that there used to be one there. And somehow, some way through the years, it got deteriorated, and somebody took it down, and it just kind of lost track of where everything went.
We'd like to see it resurrected.
Plan.
Yep. All right, any other questions or comments? Council? All right, we're going to adjourn into the 2019 budget distribution to council.
Which I've already handed it out, it's there for you to look at, we'll have a budget meeting next week.
Anything you need to add to that, Doug?
Well, I think we just, I want to give you a chance to look at it first, and we can discuss it next week. I know you haven't seen it yet, so.
All righty. I want to thank everyone for coming. I see some new faces in the back. Are you on a project from school?
Yes.
Well, welcome.
Thank you.
We welcome you.
Mayor, are they allowed to speak during the meeting?
Do you want to speak during the meeting? The meeting's adjourned. Do you want to speak?
Could they speak during the meeting, though, is my question. Would you allow them to speak during the regular
Yeah.
meeting?
Jim, what kind of question is that?
It's a simple one.
No, it isn't.
Why not?
That is ridiculous. You gentlemen, welcome, and we thank you for coming. Thank you. We're here next week too, same time.
I'm not.
It's refreshing to see you.
Yes, it is, refreshing. Thank you.
There's the dollar.
Got the dollar in?
That's what I was looking for, was the dollar.
It's there. My favorite part.
Box anywhere in the park either. Do you guys need copies of the agenda to like bring over here?
That's the one, just take it over to Manross.
Whichever one's up there, the one in there.
Where you got?
My name?
It's one of the things that everybody says, all of the park is shared by all.
We built a monument down there. That's the city.
So,
Trying to increase your ratings. Are you trying to increase your ratings?
For what? I'm just bringing it for the public.
guys.
Have a blessed one.
We didn't vote on it. They have to.
Absolutely.
That's the only reason it's not back up.
Yep.
Draft.
Thank you.